All right, and we are live. So welcome everybody to a live episode of Mike's Money Picks. Today, this is our college football week 5 live show. And per the usual this season, he's joined me every week so far this year. And he even did one week where I was not able to join. I've got my co-host here, Zach Green, aka Big Country DFS. Zach, how's everything going on this Thursday night?
All right. It's great to be here again. Thanks for having me. How are you doing?
I'm all right. It's been a little bit of a crazy week for me, just with a lot of things going on at school, a lot of things going on outside of just college football DFS, like the Ryder Cups this week, and I've been watching a lot of content following that as well. So it's just been a busy week, but definitely now have had plenty of time to research this slate, and I'm feeling pretty good going into it.
Yeah, me too. Been a busy week. It's homecoming. We've had 3 away games this week, so homecoming tomorrow. But it'll be nice to be home before midnight once this.
Oh yeah,
once in the last month. So
that's the best part of a home game, right? Is that early home time for sure. So I see got a few people watching us live. I see we got Brett in the chat. Brett, thank you for joining us live. Very much appreciate it. And as always, if you are here watching live, let us know. Hop in the chat. If there's anything you want us to discuss, anything you want to talk about, any strategy, DFS, player props, betting, even like the underdog drafts or anything like that, just let us know because we're here for you guys and we got all the information, right? I will say last week, it was not a good week in DFS for me, but I rebounded because I had a few bets that really worked. The one I talked about on here that I hammered was the first half under in Utah, Texas Tech. That one just felt easy, and that was one I didn't even have to sweat because those two offenses were just not scoring any points. How did everything go in DFS for you last week, Zach?
Yes, it was the same. Not great because I can't even remember what happened now. I feel like somebody else got hurt for me. Reed a couple weeks ago.
Hurt?
I think somebody else got hurt.
There was an injury. I can't remember. If you guys are watching live and remember one, let us know in the chat.
But it was just nothing was going right. At one point, I think I had like 40 points on my lineup because just nobody was scoring.
And we're going to talk about one of the busts from last week. We're going to talk about him tonight. I know his name's going to come up later. A guy that killed me last week. I know he killed you last week too. So we'll just hang on to that thought. So I see we got Darren in the chat. Yeah, Army and East Carolina, weird game, very weird game. The Army, they're the Black Knights, right?
Yeah.
Why did I want to call them the Cadets? Or somebody's the Cadets. It's not Army, I guess, but yeah, they're turning the ball over, and that's not like Army. That that's not the disciplined, well-coached football team you're used to seeing. East Carolina taking advantage, and has not been an interesting game since the first quarter. So I've been watching NFL in the background.
Well, Coleman just scored.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that
needed that. I had him. I had him as my captain tonight, so I needed that. I see we've also got my guy Huncho in the chat. Glad to have you here, as well as Dan Brown. Both Huncho and Dan, members of the Fantasy Corner Discord. Guys, if you're watching this and you're looking for a community to be a part of where it's just a bunch of guys talking college football, talking strategy, lineup plays all day long, Fantasy Corner Discord is the place to go. Lots of great minds in there. And if you are looking to join, the link is in the description. All right, so Zach, as we've kind of gotten used to doing around here, you want to talk a little bit about the Friday night slate before we get started?
Yeah, let me go ahead and pull it up real quick on my end.
I forgot to share my screen. So let me do that as well.
But while we're doing that, I'm also on the Fantasy Corner Discord. I also have Twitter at Big Country DFS, and I'm posting these sheets for everybody for free all year long on both of them, and also the Big Country DFS Discord. So that's where you can find them if you ever miss them.
In terms of free content, can't beat it. So this Friday night slate, I kind of like it. Like, these are 3 pretty interesting games to me. I think with your core over here, Connors and Tyson, I'm in full agreement. I think Connors is by far the best running back play on the slate. I think after him, it gets quite ugly. And I think Tyson is arguably the best wide receiver play on the slate. He's a hefty price tag, but there's definitely enough value on this slate that you can get to him. What I'm going to be doing a ton of on this slate is I'm going to be playing a ton of Arizona State TCU stacks. And the reason why is not because it has the pure highest total, but that's the one I just see as the most likely to shoot out. Like, I just could see that being an old school Big 12, like 44-41 type of game or something like that, where it's decided in the last seconds. And I just don't really see the other two games shooting out like that. So I'm going to have a ton of that game. Are you in agreement with me on that, or are you eyeing something else?
Yeah, pretty much. And something I want to point out that down at the bottom of the sheet, one of the stats down there is plays per game. And so you can see like Houston and Oregon State only average 71 and 66 plays a game, while TCU and Arizona State both averaging 75 plus. And so it's exactly like you said. Plus, both of them are two of the worst passing defenses on the slate with I agree. I think that's going to be, even though the Florida State Virginia total is higher, I don't think it's actually going to be that high, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where I feel like the total, when it gets set, it's kind of set for the median outcome or the most likely outcome, right? And not for like the actual ceiling outcome. And I just think the other game has a higher ceiling. I do think that there's plays in that Virginia-Florida State game that I like for sure. Like, I'm definitely going to be getting some of those Virginia receivers because I just don't see them having success running the ball. And I'm definitely going to be getting to Deuce Robinson as a cheap option for Florida State. But, at the end of the day, I just think that this is just a smash spot for the likes of like a Jordan Tyson, an Eric McAllister, a Jordan Dwyer, guys like that. I just think it's a great spot for.
Yeah, and I agree with Darren. Tyson might be the best receiver on any. He's probably the best receiver in college football, honestly. And he's going to be a target machine. He can get you 20 points without getting a touchdown. So,
yeah, their entire offense is like just finding ways to get him touches. And, in a PPR format like DraftKings, that's a quick way to rack up fantasy points. And yeah, I'm in agreement with Huncho. Deuce Robinson, I think he's probably the best cheap receiver on this slate, in my opinion. Now, one more thing from a strategy perspective on this slate. How are you going to handle the TCU receivers of it all? And I mean, we had the big, huge week one from Dwyer, and then everybody was on him last week, and we get the huge game from McAllister. So are you going to look to play a combination of both of them? Are you going to play some McAllister lines, some Dwyer lines, or load up on one of them? Well, what are your thoughts? And then I'll share mine.
So on Fridays, because of being at football, I only play one lineup, and I usually just make it I try to get very unique with it. And so I'm actually probably not going to play McAllister just because I know he's going to have insane ownership because everyone see 54 and they're going to, oh, I need that right away because Dwyer's cheaper and he's not going to just not be part of the offense after one down week. And so that's just my opinion is, and also I feel like Arizona State has done a pretty good job shutting down the number one receiver. Like Hawkins last week, he was big chalk and was nowhere to be found.
Right.
For Baylor. So
my perception of it is, back in the preseason, we really thought it was going to be McAllister that was going to be the wide receiver one. And the only thing that changed that was Dwyer's big game in week one. And so it begs the question of which one was the outlier? Was Dwyer the outlier, or, is McAllister's big game the outlier? Because if Dwyer was the outlier, then we were right all along in drafting Eric McAllister in the front of best ball drafts, right? But if the McAllister game was the outlier, well, then you're going to get a situation where nobody's going to play Dwyer on this slate. Like, nobody's going to play Dwyer. Everybody's going to go to McAllister. So I'm probably going to have some McAllister lines. I'm probably going to have some Dwyer lines, but I'm probably going to have more McAllister than Dwyer just because I feel like it's more likely that he is the team's wide receiver one based off of the preseason perception. But you're looking at a situation where both the games where those two guys have been on slates, Dwyer broke the slate against Carolina, McAllister broke the slate against SMU. So pretty much if you're playing Hoover or if you're looking to stack that game, you better play one of them is my thoughts on it.
Yeah, and if you look at, I'm looking up Pro Football Focus because I have an account there, and Dwyer still had 7 targets. He just only had 3 catches.
Yeah, he
So
was
it's,
not totally iced out of
yeah.
the offense.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's still going to be, and then Manjack is another guy. He had 6 targets. So, they just throw so much that any of these guys could be the guy.
Right. So I see we got Darren and Huncho agreeing with us about McAllister, right? Now, Brett saying feels like Hankerson gets some good volume and has a pretty good game. I love Hankerson. I really do. I think he's a good player. The only downside is their offensive line is really bad. Either that or every defensive line they play is really good. I don't know which one it is, but they just haven't really generated a whole lot for him. I do think he's still one of the best running back plays on the slate just because this is a really bad slate for running back. And I think the price tag is very affordable. So I think that there's some pros and cons there, right? Like the pro is he's a workhorse running back and he's going to get touches. The con is what are those touches going to lead to? So it kind of depends on what you're looking for a play, right? Like Hankerson's certainly going to have the opportunity, whereas there's a lot of other guys on this slate that you don't know if they're going to have the opportunity, but they could have success if they get it.
Yeah, I'm going to be playing Hankerson in my line because, like we talked about, he's a workhorse back, and yeah, the total's low and everything. But if you look at people can't really look at the Oregon and Texas Tech games, right? That he was game scripted out in the first quarter in those games.
Mm-hmm.
Fresno, he had 25 carries, 136 yards. He just didn't find the end zone.
Right.
And then Cal, the other close game, which they still had to be scripted out a little bit, he had 15 for 42 and a touchdown. And not to mention Florida State, Virginia, TCU are all running back by – even Arizona State, all running back by committee. So to me, it's a slate where you're going to play 4 receivers or – if you play 3 running backs, you're hoping that Sawchuk is the guy still for Florida State. But I just don't really like messing with those roulette running backs.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I have no desire to invest in the TCU situation just because without their guy Barnes, I feel like it's just a massive committee. I'm willing to take shots on the Arizona State guys, though, just because we have seen upside from their run game. And for whatever reason, the report for Kyson Brown was the weirdest thing ever. Why is there – so he's coming back from injury. Why are they reporting that he's running with the first team in practice when, like, it's week 5? Like, we're not worried about, like, the depth chart or anything like that. Like, that it's just such a weird report that makes me feel like, what if there's something to it, right? So, I don't know. I'm going to take some shots at those guys. But I agree with you. I think Hankerson, because he is the bell cow, that's his appeal. And because you don't have to play roulette, that's the appeal. And I think that is kind of easier to get right than to play the roulette game and then hope you get it right and then hope the rest of your lineup is right.
Yeah. And with Brown, I just pulled it up real quick on Twitter. Dillingham said he's going to have a larger role this because it was basically like he got 1 carry and they said he wasn't ready or something and he just didn't play. So
it's almost as strange as the whole. Did you read about all the Utah injury reporting last week?
No, I didn't see that.
So apparently, Dampier didn't practice like all week. But it was intentionally not reported. He was not listed on the injury report. And so he was going into that Texas Tech game not 100%. And you got Kyle Whittingham just totally circumventing the reporting of it.
That's
so, yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, so see the comments in the chats. Yeah, Willie Fritz is doing a good job with that program. Like, that program was pretty much left for dead going up to the Big 12. And now they're like trending in the right direction. Like, and they're totally playing in an antithetical way to the rest of the Big 12, which is always a strategy for success. Like, you see it with these service academy teams where if you run something different from everybody else and give them something different to prepare for, you're a tough matchup for them and from what they normally stop. And so that's kind of going to be Houston's MO these next few years is they're just going to be the tough, physical, grinded out team in the Big 12 that these teams aren't built to stop. And I really like what he's doing there. All right, so I believe that covers it for the Friday slate. I don't see any more questions or anything in the chat. So let's go ahead and dive into Saturday now that, everybody's here, everybody's ready. Like, we got the appetizer done. This is the main course, right? So, going to try something slightly different this week. Let's take a look at all of the games we got, right? So if you had to pick just one game to be not necessarily the highest total, but the most stackable for DFS, what would you choose?
So in my opinion, that's probably going to be um, Cincinnati, Kansas.
Okay.
I know a lot of people are going to go Notre Dame, Arkansas, but
Hmm.
that game kind of scares me a little bit just because Notre Dame has looked really good at times, and
Hmm.
it wasn't. A, I don't believe, unless I am thinking wrong, the Texas A&M game. It was a lot of scoring late. I feel like, but
So it was ignited early by the special teams touchdown, and there was like a quick flurry of points, and then it stopped for a while. And then in the fourth quarter was when it really went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Neither team could get a stop.
yeah. So, but with Kansas and Cincinnati, uh, if you look at their stats on defense, um, Cincinnati only given up 104 rushing yards a game, but they haven't really played anybody.
Right.
The one team they did play, Emmett Johnson for Nebraska, had over 100 yards, and then both of them are not that great on pass D. And so Cincinnati, not played anybody and given up 260 yards a game passing, and Daniel's looking, he's healthy, he's a lot better
Mm-hmm.
this year. That's one of those Big 12 type shootout games that I think could happen. And again, another sneaky one is Tennessee. I still don't buy Tennessee's defense. And
This
we
was going to be the
know,
one I was going to talk about.
yeah, I'll let you take it over then on that one.
So in Tennessee and Mississippi State, to me, even if the game doesn't shoot out, even if we're wrong about that part, it's just so stackable for DFS because of how like predictable the offenses are and how condensed the offenses are. Like if both of these teams score a lot of points, it's not going to be because of the running backs. In the running back rooms are absolutely committees. You don't want to play any of them, right? But if this game is going to take off, it's going to be because of the quarterbacks throwing the ball deep down the field. And both teams have two guys that they throw to pretty much. For Tennessee, it's Brazil and Staley. For Mississippi State, it's Thompson and Evans. And so if you're looking to build a stack, you have got a limited pool to choose from that if this game really does shoot out, and you build up your stack, you're probably going to be right with your stack because of just how narrow the target trees are for both those games. So, like I said, even though it's not the highest total on the slate, it's actually second. I think it's the most stackable for DFS. The Notre Dame Arkansas one worries me because of the fact that Notre Dame throws to 5 different receivers quite regularly. Arkansas plays 2 different running backs, right? Notre Dame plays 2 different running backs. So I think that there's a ton of ceiling in this game, especially considering like the main playmakers. But I also think that game that makes it the most volatile and just the most unpredictable to stack.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, with Arkansas, it's basically Blake, so that part is nice. But
Mm-hmm.
with, like you said, with Notre Dame, and even with running backs, Love scored. I don't think they're going to put up 56 on Arkansas like they did with Purdue, but Love scored 3 times, I think it was, and then Price scored 4 times. Um, and so, yeah, I like Omega Blake. He's always a nice option, and he's cheap. And I think a lot of people are going to overlook him because Surratt is right there underneath
Yeah.
him. But
The what I like about Blake, now this is like a potential like inside knowledge here. When he was at Charlotte, he killed man coverage. Like teams in the American could not guard him man to man, and Deshaun Purdy was just throwing it up there to him, letting him do the rest of the work. Right? Notre Dame runs a lot of man coverage, so that could absolutely be a scenario where schematically it may play into being a big Omega Blake game. But even then, if you get it right by playing Taylor Green and Omega Blake on the Arkansas side, then how do you get Notre Dame right? Do you just play one of the running backs? Do you try to stack CJ Carr? It's what makes it the most volatile game to stack. Now, I do see Darren's comment in the chat says Louisville Pitt stacking has a ton of options. I don't mind that one either, but also at the same time, I'm not sure if those two offenses are actually any good. It's just super wide range of outcomes in that game, in my opinion. But I do think with the general principle of, hey, this is a team that when they throw to 1 or 2 guys. Or this is a team that when they run, they're running just one guy or just two guys. That definitely does make it easier to stack. And plus that game, I do think they're very affordable options in DFS as well.
Yeah, with the Louisville pit, we were talking a little bit before the show. A lot of people are touting up Moss right now just because of the price. But they've played absolutely nobody, and he's thrown 2 picks and 2 touchdowns and been sacked 6 times for negative 100 yards rushing on the season.
So let's go ahead and make that our natural transition. Let's start talking about quarterbacks now. So, yeah, Miller Moss is showing up in the optimizers, in the projections, as one of the best values. And like you said, they haven't played anybody. He hasn't had a ceiling game. We don't really know a whole lot about Pitt's defense. I just don't know. Like, I totally understand the argument to play him. Like, he's going to probably make my player pool because of that price tag. But it's not a lock. Like, it's not just like this sure thing that you can just bank and like, all right, Miller Moss is getting me 25. Like, it's just not like that in my opinion. However, I do think, though, that on this slate, and I know from talking about it with you earlier, we're going to have a similar strategy, and I think a lot of people are going to have a similar strategy as well, of to play at least one cheap quarterback. So is there a cheap quarterback that stands out to you?
Yeah, there's quite a few, but as you can see, Sorsby's the one marked in the green there, because anytime, like we mentioned almost every week, when you have a dual threat quarterback and a high total and he's under 7,000, it's just a no-brainer play. He's been getting a rushing TD every single game, and then he also passes as well. And I just don't think that Kansas defense is all that great.
No, I've not seen a whole lot from the Kansas defense aside from them shutting down Fresno State in week 0 to make me think that they're any good. And Fresno State's not really all that good anyway. But the big thing is with Sorsby is you're getting the dual threat upside, but like nobody like acknowledges it because he's actually their leading rusher on the season. He's Cincinnati's leading rusher. And I don't know how many quarterbacks out there are actually their team's leading rusher. And even fewer are like guys that you wouldn't guess because I don't think Sorsby has that reputation, even though he is.
Yeah, and I don't understand, like, okay, everyone was playing Perdue against Kansas a couple weeks ago. And now all of a sudden the projections aren't liking Sorsby. It's literally the same kind of thing, just maybe like $400 more. And Perdue only threw 9 incompletions the entire night for 334 and 3 TDs. And he didn't even run. He only had 6 yards rushing. And we know Sorsby's going to run. And so to me, it's just a no-brainer play here.
So now we've hit up Moss, we've hit up Sorsby. And looking at what we got in the chat. So correct me if I'm wrong, Darren, but the Fighting Farmers, I believe that is Louisville, Texas. Am I right on that? Do you know,
that
Zach?
That sounds right. Let me see.
So I was born in the Dallas area. So I spent the first 5 years of my life there. So I remember some of the high schools. I think that's Louisville.
Yeah. Louisville Farmers.
And there's also is there not like a Farmers branch or something like that too?
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe I might have that wrong. But anyway, yeah, we're gonna get to Taylor Green here in a second. So Brett saying Kansas defense is decent. Yeah, I mean, we got to get a bigger sample size. That's one of the hardest things about these slates is we've seen most of these teams play one competitive game so far. And so we're really going to have much more of a knowledge on who's the defense that we're going to be targeted if we're able to have a sample size and see them play good, bad in different offenses, right? So yeah, Darren's saying that they played at neighboring high schools, and I was right about Louisville. Cool. And then we got Huncho saying Sorsby's rushing prop in the high 40s. That sounds about right to me. I think the only thing that could possibly negate that would be sacks, and the fact that sacks count against rushing yards, unfortunately. Now, I'll give you one more low-price QB that I want to talk about. I'm hopping back on Jackson Arnold this week. I think that last week, the Oklahoma defense, that was a really tough spot for him going back to his former team. And the Oklahoma defense, really, they just got home on 10 sacks. Texas A&M is not going to do that to you. I have not been impressed with the A&M defense in the times that I've watched them. I think that it's a lot easier to swallow the pill to play Arnold at 6,900 than it would be at 8,300, and I don't think anybody's going to play him. So I think that those kind of three things together, upside with rushing, not the best matchup in the world, but far from the worst, and no ownership, to me, that has me back on Jackson Arnold.
Yeah, I like Arnold as well, and we know that you can score on Texas A&M from that Notre Dame game, and another one that I like that's cheap. The only issue is he doesn't run, so that kind of when you have Arnold and Sworsby right there, but it's Blake Shapen because as we talked about, I mean, I was all over Gunnar Stockton. I still couldn't believe nobody played him that week. And he had like
the only two.
4x at halftime. It was the easiest cash play ever at 6,000. And nobody played him. And he was in my core, so I figured he would get some ownership just from that. And he just went all over Tennessee. And that's all Mississippi State does is pass. So I like him as well.
So I guess the follow-up question now is, if we're all going to have the strategy of playing at least one cheap quarterback, of the expensive guys, who's the best option? Now, I'll classify Jalen Daniels. I don't think I would classify him as expensive. I'm going to actually talk about him here in a little bit as well. I really like Haynes King this week, but I really think that Wake needs to keep that game close for him to hit his ceiling. So I think when I play Haynes King, I'm probably going to play like a Damon Claiborne on the other side or a Chris Barnes on the other side, make it a nice little game stack. Because if Haynes King is hitting his upside, he's got 5x upside at that salary. But we need the game to stay close. We don't need them to want to take their foot off the gas, because we saw it last year with them, that they were playing great when Haynes King was healthy at the start of the season. And then when he got hurt, when he got worn down, they looked awful. And so if they need to keep him healthy, and so they're going to look to get him out of this game as quick as they possibly can. So for him to reach his ceiling, we need Wake to keep it close.
Yeah, my pick is going to be Trinidad Chambliss, just because he's put up 40 in both games that he started. The only thing that would scare me off is if, some news that Simmons is going to play and he's going to come in for a drive or two. I just don't see how you do that the way that he's played the last 2 weeks, even if Simmons is healthy. And the price is cheap. And I get that LSU has been decent, but it's still an Ole Miss. And so with that rushing upside, and the price is nice there. Because LSU, they haven't really played anyone either.
Right.
Southeast Louisiana, Florida, we know is trash this year. La Tech is trash. Clemson's trash this year. So yeah, they shut down Klubnik, but he's looked awful against everybody.
Right. Yeah, I'm with Brett in the chat. Kiffin does scare me, but I'm definitely going to have to take some shots at Chambliss because, he's just put up 39 DraftKings points with ease, and that's worth a lot at that salary. So it's scary. I don't think it's a safe play, but I'm definitely going to be taking my shots at it. And Darren saying, yeah, I've been burned by a Haynes King injury. Definitely been there. The question from Alvin says, do you guys always play 2 QBs in 20 max low stakes? In a word, yes. I very rarely are there slates where I'm like, you know what, this is probably not a 2 QB slate. The last time I did it with regularity, I think, was the Jaden Daniels Heisman season, because in that season you had to play him with Neighbors or Thomas, and like it was just so expensive that playing them could still be the optimal play without having that second quarterback. But I think every slate in the last 2 seasons, with maybe one exception, I've gone 2 quarterbacks every time.
I would say I would only do it if it was like 4 or less games. Like maybe something like last weekend or what was it, last Friday with all those terrible like Flores and Tulsa dude and something like that, whenever there's literally no good options. But like tomorrow, you have Leave It and Hoover that I feel like are just the 2 no-brainer quarterbacks right there.
Yeah. And then catching back up on the chat, Jeremy says like King and Dampier. Brett saying Claiborne is the bring back like we were talking about. Jeremy says he's on Arnold, which I know has to be hard to say as a Sooner fan. And then Metro Boomin says, I like T. Jackson. You're going to have to help me out, man. T. Jackson, is that Taven Jackson from UCF? Am I missing somebody? Maybe, maybe not. Help me out. Give me a first name with the T Jackson so we can talk about him. All right. So now let's go ahead and move on to the running back position. So the name of the game at the running back position this week is going to be the injuries, right? So we have already gotten news that Daniel Highshaw is doubtful for this game, which means that we're going to have LaShawn Williams at 3,900 starting for Kansas. We could also have another cheap starter for Louisville in Keywan Brown if we get news that both Isaac Brown and Duke Watson are out. So that's already right there, 2 cheap running back starters. So does this make it really easy to just say, hey, I'm just going to play the 2 cheap running backs?
So I'm definitely going to be playing LaShawn Williams. I mean, he's looked good even with Highshaw in. And so with Highshaw out, it's just even better option because as we know, Kansas does pass a ball, but they still prefer to run. And they try to protect Daniels, so they try to run more with the running back. So Daniels will run, but it's more if there's nobody open and he needs to make a play or something like that. They don't really do as much design runs for Daniels, and so that leads to more for the running backs. With Louisville, I'm not really sure what I want to do. I mean, because Isaac Brown is good if he can play, and I just don't know a lot about the Keywan Brown and much about him.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat with you there. I think the ideal scenario would be to have like Brown or Watson in. And then Keywan Brown is the running back 2. Because what I think you would see happen if that was the case is you would see true workhorse season for Isaac Brown or Duke Watson if the other one is out. The nightmare scenario is if all 3 of them are in. But I do think that Keywan Brown is playable only if both of them are out. Let me ask you this, though. So is there any merit in your opinion to saying, okay, this guy, this normal starter that's a vital part of their game plan is injured? Could that bump up somebody different from the offense that's not at their position? And I'm going to give you an example. Do you remember last year when Bryson Daly for Army was out?
Yeah.
So when Bryson Daly was out, what we actually saw happen was everybody just went to the backup Dwayne Coleman. Hey, who's playing right now, by the way? And what ended up happening was Kanye Udo scored like 4 touchdowns. So, like, would there be any merit to saying, like, hey, Daniel Highshaw's out for Kansas. Instead of playing LaShawn Williams, I'm going to play Jaywin Daniels and hope that either he runs in the touchdowns or he throws for the touchdowns. And plus, I'm getting different off of all the people that are going to play LaShawn Williams. Do you think there is merit in making a few lineups like that?
Yeah, I would agree with that because as we've seen, and I wanted to talk about that anyways this week. Literally every single week, it seems like there's been a big chalk that's just bust on every slate.
Week 1, yeah.
Like Hawkins on the night slate seemed like I think it was the night slate free square and just nothing, like 1 catch. And then the running backs, especially the cheap running backs, have been bust. I don't think Williams will be a bust, but like you said, he might only get 10 or 15 and Daniels gets 40 or something like that.
So I guess what I say all that to say, like, we've got 3 cheap running backs this week. The only thing I will add to what you were saying with the chalk busting is it seems to be all the wide receiver chalk that's been busting. We haven't seen a slate like this where we've had like a clear and obvious running back play like what we're going to see with LaShawn Williams or what we're going to see potentially with Keywan Brown. So to me, that's something interesting to monitor going forward. And I'm going to try to track it to see, like, hey, how would you do if you just played chalk or faded chalk every week? And right now, fading chalk is winning. I can guarantee you that much.
Yeah. For cash anyways, Kevin Riley, the min price for Bama
yes, he was chalky 2 weeks ago. That was week 3, right?
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago.
So now the last thing is this is, if we're able to play cheap quarterbacks, which we talked about, and we're able to play cheap running backs, which we talked about, what does that afford you the ability to do? And I think that there's a 1A and 1B on this slate, and I think we're actually going to disagree on this, which is going to be fun. So we got 2 top-tier running backs in Bryson Washington and Jeremiah Love. So first question is it worth it with all the savings we're getting elsewhere to pay up for those guys? And then second, which one you choosing?
Yeah, I think it's definitely worth it to have at least one, if
Mm-hmm.
not both of them, because they're literally the only two guys on the slate for running backs that are going to carry the ball 20 times plus, and they have good matchups as well.
And they're both home run hitters too. That's what I like a
Yeah.
lot. Is both of them have shown the ability in their careers to break off long touchdown runs.
And see, and I was all over Sutton Smith last week, and nobody was on
Mm-hmm.
him against Arkansas, and he went off. That everybody got off just because the
DeRosier, yeah.
was DeRosier was playing, and so I honestly think you can make a case, and I might be doing it in my cash lineup to play both of those guys together, Love and Washington, because you have cheap quarterbacks and you have another cheap running back.
I was tinkering around with it earlier today. And if you're willing to go 3 running backs and play LaShawn Williams or Kevon Brown or even Rodney Fields, you can do it if you're willing to play cheap quarterbacks too. That would be the caveat is you got to have 2 cheap quarterbacks, and then you got to have one of the cheap running backs. And then receiver, you can actually be fairly balanced. I don't like a whole lot of the cheap receivers this week, which we're going to talk about here in a second. So I actually do think it's possible to play both of them. I'm going to make the argument because I know you're more of a cash game guy. I'm more of a GPP guy. And I think in GPPs, I think I would rather have Jeremiah Love. I think that the 6,000 or the 600 you're getting in savings is not nothing, right? It's definitely going to allow you to do something. And then I also think that, last week we saw the Notre Dame running back score 7 total touchdowns, and Love had 3 of them. If the Notre Dame running backs score 7 total touchdowns again here this week, I'm not saying they will, but I think it's more likely than not that he'd have more than 3 of them. So I just think that there's a ton of touchdown upside. There's a ton of home run upside, and we're seeing them use him more and more. Like last year, they never let him get above, I believe it was 18 touches in a game, and this year he's already had 19 and 23. So I just think that there's a ton of upside with Love. I think he's going to be less owned. So I think that Love is probably the GPP play for me. But I totally agree with you, and I totally agree with everybody in the chat that Washington could absolutely have a career day. I would just rather go with the guy that's going to be less owned and less expensive.
Yeah, and I don't think you can really say anything negative about either play. So nobody's going to fault anybody for playing one over the other, playing them both together. The one thing I will say is if you fade both of them, you better be 100% sure like the rest of your lineup is just going to go off, because you're leaving probably guaranteed 20 points on the table from both. Both of them, I think, aren't going to score less than 20 unless they get hurt or something.
Right.
But the one thing I will say at Washington, I'm not saying this to fade him, but I told you about it a little bit earlier today, is I feel like Oklahoma State does play with a little fire because of Gundy's being fired in the middle of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if some of these rumors are true that they gave him the option to retire and he decided not to, and they just canned him. And so I'm not saying that obviously it's not going to fix their defensive issues in a week, but they did have that extra day of practice, extra day of film, extra day of all that because they played on Friday night. So it could be a scenario where you want to go do Robertson and some wide receivers, and because their pass defense is not that great either.
Right.
If they try to load the box and shut down Washington, and then they start firing over the top.
Yeah, it's the thing about defending Baylor. Like, sometimes I kind of try to put myself in the coach's shoes. Like, if I was a DC, how would I try to defend this team? And with Baylor, it's like, pick your poison. Like, if you're going to load up the box and try to stop Washington, like, you might be able to do it. But you're going to be giving one-on-ones. You're going to be giving favorable matchups to those wide receivers who are pretty good in their own room and can really throw it. So it's going to be interesting. I think somebody on that Baylor offense is going to have a really good day. Washington highly likely to be it, but I definitely think that there's a chance that it could be the Baylor passing game, not the run game. So while you were talking, you floated the possibility of playing neither of them, right? So to me, if you're playing neither Washington nor Jeremiah Love, does that mean that you're spending up for Jeremiah Smith? Is he an option for you here on this slate?
I hadn't really thought about it yet, but I mean, he's always in play. And
yeah.
I think that game, we didn't mention at the beginning, but I think that game could be a sneakier shootout type game because
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people, and I feel like the total's lower and people aren't really talking it up because it's Washington. People don't really watch Washington because they play late, all that stuff. Their offense is pretty legit. They got some stud receivers. They got a stud quarterback. And I don't think Ohio State is just, I mean, they shut down Texas, but no offense. I mean, Manning, he looked bad against UTEP too.
Right.
So, so I do think playing Smith, if nobody's going to be on him because everybody's playing up to Love and to Washington, that could be a way to go too. Or play one with them instead of both the running backs. So
it's really hard to evaluate these teams, right? Because we've seen Ohio State, Freudian slip there. Ohio State played Texas, and then they have played Ohio, who just does not have the athletes to compete with them. And they played Grambling, which was a great battle of the bands, but not a great football game. And so we have nothing to bank off of for this Ohio State offense because they played nothing in between best defense in the country and literal crap. And the Washington defense, I don't think it's very good, but I know it's definitely better than literal crap. So yeah. I just don't really know what to make of it. And I'm pretty confident the Washington offense is pretty good, but I don't know how much they're going to be able to score against Ohio State. To me, that's one of the games on the slate that has the widest range of outcomes. But one outcome I'm pretty certain in is they're going to be getting Jeremiah Smith the ball. Even in the Texas game, they targeted him so much. And he didn't have a huge game against them, but in PPR scoring, it was okay because of just how much raw targets that he had. And so I really think that if you're not playing Washington and Love, it makes a lot of sense to go to Smith for me. I haven't made my mind up on this yet, but I thought about it earlier. If I'm building with my optimizer this week, I'm going to set a minimum one rule for Washington, Love, Smith, and then do you know the fourth name I'm going to say?
Mario Craver. No.
Well, not quite. We're going to talk about him in a second. This guy's in a still high price point.
Okay. Quarterback or receiver?
Receiver.
Mekhi
Lemon. I think that especially if Jacoby Lane is out, you're going to see a massive target share from Mekhi Lemon. I don't think that the Illinois defense is very good. We just saw them last week. And then the fact that they're down multiple starters in their secondary. They had the one that had the targeting last week against Indiana. They had two that went down to injury. Like, their secondary is bad. And Lemon is going to be the guy that can take advantage of that. So I really think I'm going to put in the rule of minimum one, if not two, between Washington, Love, Smith, and Lemon. Are you as high on Lemon as I am?
I always like Lemon. I mean, he gets so many targets. And like we talked about, Illinois looked bad. The one thing I will say, and I don't know because I haven't really looked at it as much for college football, but in college basketball, and I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but anytime the West Coast teams were going into the Eastern time zone, they sucked. And so could we see USC be a little sluggish? I mean, they're still going to throw it a ton.
So I remember reading last season the data backs the Big Ten teams traveling multiple time zones did not cover spreads at a requisite rate. Like, their record against the spread was like significantly worse than 50-50. But I don't necessarily know how that impacts the fantasy performance, right? Because just because USC doesn't cover the spread doesn't mean that they're not going to be having success throwing the ball, right?
Yeah, I think they're going to be passing either way, even if they're up big or even if they pass even when they're up by 20.
Yeah, Lincoln Riley loves to run it up.
But one more thing, going back to Washington, just to mention real quick, if you haven't seen it, Oklahoma State has 17 players on the injury report that are out and 5 more that are questionable or doubtful. And so there could be a situation where this game is over by halftime and they're going to just sit Washington. And so you have to consider that there could be a chance that he got 3 TDs in the first half and he's fine with that, but it could be over quick. So it's just something to think about.
Could it be a possibility that some of those names on the injury reports are guys that are going to end up redshirting because now their coach is fired?
Yeah, and that's another
Yeah.
thing. They've only played 3 games. They can play 4 games, and now because their coach was fired, they're allowed to transfer for free.
Because I
And
know
so, yeah,
we saw Virginia Tech.
Shetron and Lofton. Yeah, some of these guys on here.
Virginia Tech had like multiple guys the day after Pry got fired. Like, yeah, I'm in the portal. And it's like, these guys, these ADs might want to think twice about firing their coach this early in the season because, what if it just depletes the entire roster the rest of the season and you just put out an embarrassing product, right?
Yeah.
So there's just another interesting layer to it, right?
So, I mean, I think in cash, you got to have Washington or Love. I mean,
Yep.
even you just take because the ownership's going to be there. So it doesn't matter if he gets 15 or 40. So, but I could see a case like you mentioned with Love being a higher scorer in GPP.
Yeah. And, in GPP, you want the most points possible. You also want the least ownership possible. You don't want to be sharing it because the way the prize pool works, you make a whole lot more for first than you do for 11th. And trying to optimize for those first place finishes is always the move. So also interesting point here from Brett says Brock and Hicks could be transferring. That would make Rodney Fields a really interesting play if that's the case.
Yeah, Brock's one of the guys listed as doubtful. And so I already think Fields is a good play because he's doubtful. And then there was another running back. Now that I already closed off of it, let me pull up. There was another running back on there that I think wasn't playing too.
And then also, too, we've watched Baylor. They played 2 pretty high-profile games this season against Auburn and SMU, and I guess even last week against Arizona State. Like, they can't stop inside zone. Like, the opposing teams can just run inside zone right at the middle of the Baylor defense, and it just provides very little resistance. And so, an interim head coach, new play caller, what if he's just like, what, we're just going to run it right at Baylor and hope that that's going to be our success?
Yeah, and Baylor, I mean, they didn't stop anything either. I mean, so, but you do need Oklahoma State to at least put up some kind of points for Washington to hit 40, 50
right.
plus.
So maybe a little Washington field stack could be an interesting way to play it. We'll see. Yeah. There's definitely a lot of different angles that you can take. All right, so we are closing in on 50 minutes, which is good because really there's only like one last topic I want to talk to you about, and it's these mid to low priced receivers, right? So, it's easy to have a short memory playing DFS, but if you guys remember last week was the week of cheap chalk at wide receiver, right? We had Harrison Wallace, we had Romello Brinson, even Jordan Dwyer to a degree. And guess what? All of them were bad. None of them made you any money, right? And this week, I don't really see a whole lot of cheap wide receiver plays that I like, but I see a lot in the mid-range. Just a whole lot of about 5 to 6K solid options that should not be priced that low, and just a lot of really comfortable clicks from 5 to 6K. So I'll let you start, and then I'll go. Who is your favorite play between 5 and 6K at the wide receiver position?
Favorite one is probably also the chalkiest one is Mario Craver.
That was going to be mine, so I'll let you take him.
So he's got 5+ catches, 100+ yards, and a touchdown in every single game. Now, do I think he's going to score a touchdown every single game? Obviously not. No. But 5 catches and 100 yards is still 3x easy at this price. So I don't think he's going to still put up 25, 35 plus, but you only need around 15 to 20 for a solid score at that price.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the price, right? And, watching them against Notre Dame, and really I watched them a lot in week 1 against UTSA too. Why I was watching that game, I don't remember, but maybe it was a hate watch. But I just remember watching him and his role in the offense. Like, I really thought the KC Concepcion would be like their, shallow receiver, design touches, easy to get the ball to guy. But it's kind of Craver. They really just use him on a ton of these crossing routes, and it's what Marcel Reed's really good throwing at. And he usually beats his man or usually finds a soft spot in the zone. And he's really good at turning these crossing routes into like 30, 40, 50-yard gains by either outrunning a guy or making somebody miss. And to me, that's just a super consistent role because it's not like you're relying on Marcel Reed hitting bombs to him, or it's not like you're relying on him going up and mossing two dudes for a touchdown every week. Like, it's something that's sustainable, repeatable, and is a role in the offense. And I think that it just makes him a great play this week.
Yeah. The only thing I'll mention, and I put it in the write-up because he's actually in my core, just the spoiler there, is everyone's going to be playing him, and you can get KC Concepcion for 500 more and no ownership on the same team. And he's put up 12, 25, 22. It's not like he's done bad. He's had 3 catches and 70-plus yards every game. So that's what we mentioned before the show is every single week, everyone is just like loading up. And so the week that everybody was on the cheap Baylor guys, I said, dude, Josh Cameron.
Yep.
And then he goes off and no ownership. That's the reason I cashed that week. And then last week, now I can't even remember who it was.
It was Jordan Dwyer and McAllister.
Yeah, McAllister and Dwyer. I said play McAllister. And still I saw everybody in chat complaining about Dwyer. And it's like, I don't have anything wrong with playing him, but it's like we talked about. If you're playing a guy in GPP and he's 40, 50% or even 30%, but his teammate is still going to get the same amount of looks at 1/10 of that ownership, why not at least in a couple lineups so you have something exposure in case the other guy is just awful.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong. Like, there's a lot of I think the best way to phrase this, especially when you watch like golf or NFL shows, like the shows for the sports that have like huge prize pools, like huge followings, right? There's a lot of people on there that are like, oh, like you can't play everyone. Oh, you got to make a stand. Oh, you can't play, this guy at chalk. You can't play these 2 receivers on the same team. College football DFS ain't like that. If I want to build out a lineup, right, and I believe the math would work out almost perfectly on this, I could just as well make a lineup with Bryson Washington and Mario Craver, and then I could make the same build, but swap Washington to Love and swap Craver to Concepcion. And what I would be doing is I would be lowering my ownership, and I would just be looking to capture the same plays, but yet not the same plays. And so I think that that's a strategy to consider this week is like, hey, if everybody's on Craver, what if I get some Craver, but what if I also get some Concepcion at a little less ownership and a little more cost? It could be a strategy that could really work out in the long run, like we saw last week with Eric McAllister.
Yeah. Anytime you got a guy that's getting 10 times the ownership, like just to put it in perspective, Roto Grinders has them at 35% Craver right now.
I think that's fair.
But they have Concepcion at 1%.
Yeah.
And the projection is 12 for Concepcion and 19 for Craver. So for 1%, and that's just one more touchdown, one more big catch, and he outscores him.
Right. And looking at it from the site I've got too, believe it or not, Craver is actually the second listed value wide receiver. I thought he would be first. Do you want to guess who the first one is?
Well, if you sort of buy a point per dollar on this side as well, it's probably the same guy, Ryan Davis.
Yes. So that was the next guy I was going to talk about. Is now I want news on Devin Dampier. I really do, but because that's a weird situation last week with him being injured but not being on the report and then not playing well. But this is a guy who's just getting force-fed the football. 10 catches in each of the last 2 weeks. He should not be 4,500. To me, that's another easy play. I think he's probably going to be pretty chalky, but that's another very easy click. So I guess what I'm saying through all this is like last week, don't play all the chalk. Find a way to get off of some of it. So if you are sitting here, you're like, hey, well, I really like Mario Craver. All those stats sound really good. Mike made his role in the offense sound really secure. Well, then play Craver, but don't also play Ryan Davis. Don't also play Bryson Washington. Don't also play LaShawn Williams. Just don't play all of the chalky guys in the same build. But know that they're chalky for a reason, right? Because Ryan Davis is a guy that's just seeing a ton of touches, and all the projection sites have him as the best value play at wide receiver.
Yeah, and then so something to mention there is another guy that's the same price as Ryan Davis that I like is Brennan Thompson.
I agree with you on that.
Because as we talked about, they're going to be passing, and Tennessee gave up a big game to Zachariah Branch for Georgia, and so Thompson, I mean, he's got now he's been a little bit more TD dependent, but they also they won 63-0 and 38-10. So I don't really put too much into the fact that he only had 2 catches in those games because the close games, six plus catches and 90 plus yards, and then 2 TDs against Arizona State, including that bomb to end the game.
Yeah, that was what I was going to add. Is in the close games, his role was bigger, which is what you're going to see this game in all likelihood. If it's certainly not going to be a blowout Mississippi State win. So it's either going to be a close game that they're going to win, or a game where they're going to be trailing and looking to throw, which could be increased throwing volume. So it just everything lines up for Brennan Thompson in that regard. And like you said, same exact price tag as Ryan Davis, easy way to get off of some chalk. So we got a little sidetracked there, but me and you were talking about this guy earlier in the week. I'm going to go back to Elijah Surratt. So in each of the last 3 games, an Indiana receiver has accounted for more than 30 DraftKings points. And that is just uncanny. You don't see that happen very often. So if they're going to do it again against Iowa, which no disrespect to Iowa, but this is not the same Iowa State or Iowa defense that we've seen in the last decade. They're just not as good. And so if they're going to be, not the best defense in the world, Mendoza is going to be force feeding Surratt the ball. We saw what Ian Strong of Rutgers did last week. There's a very similar way to get to that Indiana offense at a very affordable price tag. And I don't think he's going to be super popular.
Yeah, that's what originally I thought he was going to be chalk. And then now I'm pulling it up and it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9th highest owned guy for a guy that's going to get a ton of targets. And Iowa, that's the only thing is though they want to, really slow the game down. It would be my only concern there. But I don't believe that their defense is going to be able to shut down Indiana.
So interestingly enough, I did not know this till I looked it up, because I use DFS Hero as my projections and my optimizer, even though I usually tinker a lot of the projections. That way I get the guys I want in my lineups. They do this ranking for GPP play and cash game play at wide receiver. The number 1 cash game play is Mario Craver. That's not going to surprise anybody. They have Elijah Surratt ranked as their number 1 GPP play. So definitely a guy that is going to come in with a ton of upside, not a whole lot of ownership. Really solid play there. So before we head to the core 4 and wrap it up, are there any other receivers that you really wanted to go and talk about?
Let's see. I'm trying to think if there was anybody. I like going back again. Nobody's going to play him. Cam Coleman. We know he's super talented. I mean, he's still scoring 12 plus a game, but just not getting a lot of catches. Also on the same team, Eric Singleton.
I don't mind getting to either of those, especially in a Jackson Arnold stack, because I do like Jackson Arnold.
Yeah, and then one more, because like we've talked about before, a chalk bus, go right back to him. Nobody's going to be on him. Harrison Wallace.
Yep, I was going to mention him as well.
Because it was a 45-10. They were just smoking them from the get-go, and they were getting rushing touchdowns. And so they still passed, but they didn't really need to pass. And so they're going to be passing in this game a lot more. Yeah,
I think that no one's going to play him because he burned everybody last week, myself included. So I feel like what's the best way to word this? It's kind of like if you're sitting at a roulette table, right? And you're like, you know what? I'm just going to bet on red. I'm just going to bet on red. And it pops up black 3 times. You don't leave the table. You keep betting on red and know that it's eventually going to hit. It's the same way. He's got a huge role in the offense. This game's going to feature plenty of points, we think, at least. And, he's not going anywhere. He's still in a reasonable price tag. I just think that just keep going back to him and hopefully reap the rewards of nobody playing him.
Yeah, they threw only 27 times and ran 44 times. And we know with that offense, it's not always going to be the case. It's going to be flipped this week. They're probably going to throw 45 times and run 25 times. And then one more, Brett in the chat wants to talk about Raphael Williams.
Yes. So to me, if you're playing a Pitt Louisville stack, he's the stacking partner you want in that game. If you're looking to play any Pitt receiver, he's the receiver you want. He is the target hog on this offense. I don't think he's going to be super popular, which creates a leverage situation, especially with all the guys priced around him. And so if you're thinking is that this game turns into a shootout, if you're thinking is that Pitt's able to score some points on Louisville, then he's a great guy to play. He's probably going to be on the fringe of my player pool. Like, I'm probably going to sit down Saturday morning and be making a decision on if I want Raphael Williams or not. I don't know what I'm going to decide yet, but I'm certainly considering it.
Yeah, that's kind of the same feeling I have with him and then Lacey and Bell on the other side.
Yes, very similar ideology.
Yeah, we're just not seeing enough right now. Not saying that it's not going to happen, but there's just so many other guys with so many. I mean, like Evans and Thompson from Mississippi State, Coleman and Singleton and Conception, and there's just so many other guys that I want to get to. But like you said, it kind of depends on your lineup. If you have all the chalk running backs, the chalk quarterbacks, then get different on the receivers. But if you have low owned on the quarterbacks and the running backs, then just go ahead and play Craver and those guys.
Correct. You're not going to win playing all the chalk this week. And there is going to be chalk this week. Like, to me this week, last week it was super easy to predict chalk. This week, I think it's super easy to predict chalk. This week, it's going to be Craver at wide receiver, Ryan Davis at wide receiver, and then the cheap injury depth chart running back guys. That's going to be your chalk. And so it just definitely creates a situation where if you're looking to make your strategic pivots, he's a guy that you could strategically pivot off of. And then one I will throw out in the chat, or not even in the chat, lastly, to me, if you're looking to punt wide receiver this week, you could do worse than Kobe Prentice. 9 DraftKings points in every game, a role in the offense that's going to score a lot of points. No disrespect to Oklahoma State, but they're going to have a lot of opportunities to score touchdowns. And he's only 3,200. He could be a guy that could allow you to get to 2 of the top running backs or 2 of the top quarterbacks, or to fit a Mekhi Lemon or a Jeremiah Smith.
Yeah, and I agree with that, because as we know, Baylor's going to throw it to everybody.
Yep.
A couple other guys down there too. Jaylen Brown for Arkansas, another cheap guy.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's, without looking at it real quick, I think he's second on the team behind Blake in targets.
I believe that's accurate.
And
it's
then,
one of the Browns. Or the other Brown.
And Deuce Alexander actually led the team in catches last week for Ole Miss. And then Bauer Sharp for a tight end, almost min price there. He's got 3 catches in every game except for the Louisiana Tech game.
Right.
And he had 5 for 73 and a touchdown last week. And we know that LSU historically loves the tight end, especially in the red zone.
You're going to want to monitor the Tradez injury, or Tradez Green injury on that as well.
Yeah.
If he plays, I think that would lessen Sharp's touchdown equity, but Sharp is still the guy that's going to be used as an every down player. But Green will come in the red zone and they'll just lob him up jump balls. So, yeah, could lower the value a little bit there, but maybe not a whole lot. And when it's all said and done.
Yeah, when it's almost min price, you don't need a whole lot there.
Right, you don't need a huge game from him. So we got Darren in the chat, says, any mention of Mendoza? We haven't talked about him, actually. He's kind of in that mid-range of quarterback where, he's not up with the expensive guys. He's not considering a cheap guy. I don't think he's the best play in the world, but like anytime you throw 5 touchdowns in 3 straight games, you kind of got to consider him. And what he's done lately has been very impressive. And so he's going to get consideration from me. Whether or not he will make the cut, I don't know, because I would rather play in a similar price range. I would rather play Jalen Daniels. I would rather play Haynes King. I'd rather play Trinidad Chambliss. But I'm not going to fault anybody for playing Mendoza, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I kind of have probably this might be one of the hotter takes of the week that a lot of people aren't on, in the fact that Indiana, they played every single game at home so far, and now they're
Interesting.
going to Iowa, and Iowa fans are pumped up because it's the first time. And now, of course, I don't have the tweet anymore, but it's the first time since Michigan came to Iowa that a top 10 team has been to Kinnick Stadium. And we know that that environment can get a little crazy. And
Oh
so,
yeah.
uh, just from seeing Mendoza when he was at Cal, when he played on the road, I'm not 100% sold on Indiana. And it could burn me. I'm still going to have Surratt. I probably won't have Mendoza just because, like you mentioned, there's other guys there. And so, uh, yeah, uh, that's just my opinion. I'm
Mhm.
very much on the home road, especially for places that are notorious for being a pretty rowdy environment.
Right. And, for me, one of my weaknesses personally in DFS over the years has been playing too many guys, keeping too big of a player pool. And so I'm really trying to narrow it down as much as possible, which is what really makes it tough to play a guy like Mendoza for me this week when there's so many other quarterbacks that I like, right? Like, I really like Sorsby. I really like Arnold. I really like Daniels. Like, it just, you got to cut some people out. And he's probably one that's going to be getting cut out for me. I do, Darren. That's a very ball knower joke right there. Maybe I should Google Indiana's coach. That's funny.
Well,
All right, so go ahead.
and I just looked it up real quick to make sure I'm not, giving you guys crap. But in nine, he's played in 9 career road games. Mendoza has,
Mm-hmm.
and the only good ones he had was against Stanford and Wake Forest. And we're talking about a lot worse teams than Iowa.
Yeah, a lot
So
worse defenses than Iowa.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay, so let's wrap this thing up here. We're right at an hour, right around schedule. The core 4, it's all 4 guys that we talked about. We got Mario Craver, LaShawn Williams, Bryson Washington, Brendan Sorsby. I got to say, Zach, I am in agreement with you on 3 of them. 3 of these guys are probably going to make my core. Craver, Williams, Sorsby. I think I'm going to mix up my exposures to which studs I want to get to, though. And I don't know if Washington is going to make the core for me just off of that. Like, I think I'm going to mix in Love. I think I'm going to mix in Smith and Lemon. So I don't know if he's going to end up being a core play for me or not. I'll have to see how everything shakes down. But can you make the case to me as to why he should be a core play?
for Washington.
For Bryson Washington, yes.
Okay, so for Washington, um, it just Oklahoma State is terrible. And now Gundy's gone. All the players are going to be gone. It's not even close. I mean, it's the worst run D on the slate. They've given up 260 yards a game. The second worst is actually Baylor, but it's down at 216. And then everybody else is below 200. And so he's got over 100 yards every single game. He can catch passes. And like I mentioned earlier, the only really bad thing is if it blows out quickly. But with Pendergrass already out, Caden Knighton, he's not really going to get much action unless it's just a blowout. And so if Oklahoma State can keep it, within 14 to 21 points by halftime, I think he could have a ceiling game. Now, if they're up 42 to zip at halftime, then that could be a different story. But and as I mentioned before, like I do every week, the core for me is more for cash games and then like high dollar single entry games that you guys liked, where you want that secure ownership. But as we mentioned, I mean, Love and Washington, you could play them both together with the value we got, and I think that might end up being the case eventually.
So I decided to look this up. I don't know why I hadn't done this already, but I looked up the game last year between Baylor and Oklahoma State, right? So I got good news and I got bad news. Which one do you want first?
Well, I already looked it up too. So Pendergrass was the leading rusher, but he's not playing.
The good news is that combined the top 2 running backs ran for 220 yards. The bad news is that 142 of that was Pendergrass. So only 78 for Bryson Washington.
but like we mentioned, that was whenever Pendergrass was playing, and
Right. And Richard
Baylor,
Reese, blast from the past name there. Richard
yeah,
Reese was a factor in that backfield.
yeah, that was before they decided, oh, we have a guy here that we should run 25 times a game. That was before that happened. But Oklahoma State, like we've been talking all night, their run defense was horrendous last year, and they didn't get anyone to get better because Gundy doesn't want to do the portal and the NIL, and that's why he's canned.
Right. That's probably why he's gone. Yeah. All right. So, like I said, I've still got some decisions to make on who's going to end up being in my core, but we talked them all out. I do like Sorsby a lot. I do like LaShawn Williams a lot. I do like Mario Craver a lot. This is another slate where you're going to have to be monitoring injury news, though, especially with some of these running backs, and that's definitely going to make some decisions as to who ends up making the lineups or not. But that is going to do it for the live show this week, guys. We hit our high this week in viewers from any show that I've seen. We got up to 22 at one point. So nice to have all you guys out there watching. Please do us a favor before you go. Hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. That way you can be back with us every week. Now, a little bit of a programming note. I do believe next Friday or next week we're going to end up doing this show on Friday. Because this was the Friday you told me you were able to, right?
Yeah, coming up on the 3rd. Yeah, we don't have a game next week, so.
Yeah, I do think we're going to do this show next Friday. So stay tuned for that. But hey, if you're subscribed, you'll know when we go live, right? Because that's how subscribing works. So if you don't want to miss out, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Because I know for me personally, Friday will work better. Because next week for me, I mentioned this on the show last week. Next week for me is the full week of tryouts for me for the girls flag football team that I coach. So I'm going to be busy every single day. So it'd be nice to be able to kind of unwind, get everything done, and then Friday night super lock in and do the live show.
Yeah. So one other thing that I want to mention, that just a rant that I have against DraftKings.
Go for it.
Is like with Washington and Love, they had no problem with like the guy in the chat was talking about Genty and Gordon pricing them above 10,000. Why are we going 85 and 9,100 here? Like those guys need to be over 10,000 so that they wouldn't be as owned if they were priced a little bit higher, especially with the value. They still sucking on pricing, and it's 5 weeks in.
So I'm curious, do you think that maybe their whole goal is to try to grow the game, and so they're making it easy intentionally? Is that something they could be doing? Because it still feels really easy to build a lineup.
Yeah, I guess that's what they're doing, and we've seen a lot more college creators come out, but within the last 3 years, even before that, there wasn't very much. There was like Roto Grinders and maybe like one more, and so there's been slowly getting. So maybe that could be is they're trying to get people that are able, because that's the other thing that stinks is it's not available everywhere.
Right. Well, and also to your point, that it was actually one of the reasons why I decided to start this channel was literally I'm just sitting here looking around and I'm like, hey, like there's nobody talking college football DFS, and like I'm doing all this research, playing all these games. Why don't I just start talking about it? And so it kind of, and then also at the time I also did a ton of NFL content because my friends basically asked me for fantasy football advice every single week. Started off with NFL and college football, and now because of the way that the YouTube algorithm works and my NFL videos never show up on anybody's feed, I just started doing just college football and focusing on every slate. So, hopefully, like we said, more creators, more content out there for it, grow the game, get more people playing, and maybe we'll get better pricing from DraftKings. Maybe.
Yeah. And then the Darren wants to know a preview of Big Country high school opponent tomorrow. So it's actually our homecoming. We played our rivals last week, and they're not good this year. So we smoked them 56-26. Started the game with a 90-yard kickoff return to the 2. And then we had a pick.
That's always nice.
Yeah, pick down to the 2. So it was 14-0 within like 5 minutes. So that's a good good time. This week it's kind of another rival about an hour away that they're coming here for our homecoming game. They beat us pretty bad last year, 49-7, but we had our top offensive lineman and our quarterback were out that game. And so hopefully it'd be a lot better. I do love that our offense is the kind of triple option Army, Navy type.
Mhm.
We threw one pass last week for 2 yards. And so we had 363 rushing yards, though. So it makes the games go a lot faster, though.
Oh, it sure does.
Running that clock.
It sure does, and especially once you get up 40 and that clock gets running, or at least in North Carolina, it's the 40-point rule for running clock.
Yeah, we don't have that in Texas. So unless you're 6-man, if you're 6-man, it's 45-0, like a 45-point margin at halftime. The game's over. They just don't play the second half if it's a 45-point at halftime. But they will sometimes agree. Coaches will do a running clock if it's a blowout, but it's not anything set in stone.
So I learned. So I said that we got the 40-point rule in North Carolina for tackle football. I learned last year, because it was the first year me ever doing flag football. It was the first year that the sport was in existence, right? So we're beating this team pretty bad. And it's 28-0 because we go for 2 every time because, I'm a math guy and, the 2-point conversion is the way to go. And so it's 28-0. And the ref comes to me and says, hey, do you want to go for 1 or 2? And I'm like, we've been going for 2 all game. He's like, if you get to 30, the game's over, right? And so I'm like, actually, let me go for 1. I'm going to make this thing 29-0 so that way I can get all my backups in and get them more playing time. So that way they'll be happy. And so we went for 1. We got the conversion, made it 29-0, and then got everybody in the game, and everybody went home happy. So I don't know if that's considered running the score up or not if I didn't actually score another point. I don't even know if anybody else was aware of that other than me, that's what we were doing. But, definitely a very interesting situation there.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And then, so do you remember me telling you last week that we were having our first kind of tryout day?
Yeah, and that there was a whole bunch of girls that wanted to try out or whatever.
So let me have you guess, right? And if you want to put a guess in the chat, if you're still here watching. So last year I had 25 on my roster, right? This was the first day of tryouts, and I'm offering 7 different tryout dates. How many do you think came to this first day? And was 25 on the roster last year.
I'm waiting to see if anybody in the chat says something. I'm going to guess 41.
It's pretty darn close. It was 35. Now, the issue I run into, Darren 45, that's not a bad guess. So the issue I ran into is I only have 30 flag belts. So when these girls were not in the drill or not in the scrimmage, they were literally giving their flag belt to somebody else. Like we were rotating flag belts because, I didn't have enough for all the girls. And so yeah, I'm going to have a lot of cuts to make at the end of tryouts. That's the downside. And that's the not fun part of the job. But, I definitely have a very good pool to pick from because a lot of the school's best athletes are coming out to play flag football now because the girls they know last year played it, enjoyed it, and won a championship. And so now they're all coming out. So, good problem, bad problem, right?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Need to expand the athletic budget.
Yeah, I wish. Lord knows I don't have the money to go out and buy more flags. I'm living on a teacher's salary. My wife's got a teacher's salary, and all our money right now goes to diapers. So that money needs to come from somewhere other than my own pocket. That's for sure. All right. So we'll go ahead and wrap up there, guys. Appreciate you guys sticking around with us and just kind of chatting and cutting it up. But yeah, best of luck to you in your game tomorrow night, Zach.
Thank you.
Best of luck to everybody on this DFS slate. Hopefully we gave you guys all the information you need in order to build some winning lineups. But we're going to go ahead and end the live show right there. Thank you guys for joining us. Remember, be on the lookout for next Friday is when we're probably going to do this show next week. At least that's the plan right now. If you're subscribed, you'll know when we go live. But plan is next Friday. So make sure you are here for that. And other than that, best of luck to you guys this week. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.